That's what the enemy does. He wants to tell us, hey, God has left you. God is not with you. God didn't tell you to do this. You told yourself to do this. God's not in this. Look, you're not going nowhere. Everything is not working out. And because we're human, we struggle with that a lot. Now, it's a very powerful thing that the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 16:9, because he says that the opposition that he faced in his ministry did not take away from the fact that there was still an open door. Paul did not view opposition as an open door. And we all would have quickly given up and questioned everything. Like, why did God even send me here? Did God even tell me to do this in the first place? Maybe it wasn't God after all. But Paul never said those things. He saw everything as an opportunity, even opposition. Now, let's get back to verses 33 to 38. Even at that hour of the night, the jailer cared for them and washed their wounds. Then he and everyone in his household were immediately baptized. He brought them into his house and set a meal before them, and he and his entire household rejoiced because they all believed in God. The next morning, the city officials sent the police to the jailer. Let those men go, they told them. So the jailer told Paul, the city officials have said you and Silas are free to leave. Go in peace. But Paul replied, they have publicly beaten us without a trial and put us in prison, and we are Roman citizens. So now they want us to leave secretly? Certainly not. Let them come themselves to release us. So we see that even the Apostle Paul was like, no. They're not going to beat us in public and then release us in secret. They want to release us. They're going to publicly release us. They're going to apologize for what they did. We see that the Apostle Paul had a way about him as well. He wasn't necessarily like perfect as we would say, oh, okay, fine, thank you, God bless. No, they publicly beat us. They're going to publicly apologize. In verse 38, when the police reported this to the city officials, they were alarmed to learn that Paul and Silas were Roman citizens. They didn't know that. So they came to the jail and apologized to them. Then they brought them out and begged them to leave the city. When Paul and Silas left the prison, they returned to the home of Lydia. There they met the believers and encouraged them once more, and then they left the town. So we see that God provided them through all of this. Okay, he brought them to Lydia when he got there. She provided home. Then he allowed them to be thrown into prison. He provided for them, and there he gave them favor with the prison guard after being beaten by, causing this earthquake. And God used them every step of the way. People go to prison because they deserve it most of the time, right? But Paul and Silas were in there wrongfully. They had every reason to be angry. They had every reason to be bitter. They had every reason to quit and say, screw this. Why did God allow this? He told us to come here and then allowed this to happen. They had every reason to have that attitude, yet they didn't. They prayed out loud and they sung their hymns out loud. And I'm sure they were in a lot of pain from being beaten with wooden rods. They had every reason to be angry, and yet they continued to be obedient in the face of opposition, and God used them every step of the way. He used them to preach to Lydia in her house. He used them to free that slave girl of that demon. He used them in the prison to bring the jailer and his household, and probably many of the men in prison with them who deserved to be there. It says that the chains came off of all of them. Okay, so we see that God provided them through this whole ordeal, and he gave them favor in unfavorable circumstances. And as they left, they were encouraging everybody. Instead of, you think they'd be the ones to be needing encouragement, but they were still doing the encouraging. So we must take notes on how the Apostle Paul viewed his ministry. We all have a ministry. No matter what your ministry is, it's all of equal importance. We all have a ministry. We all have a ministry that we should take as seriously as the Apostle Paul did, and stop waiting for it to look how we expect, and understand that ministry is not always what we think it is. It may be much less glamorous as to what we're used to seeing on our TV screens, just as important, if not more important, because not everything you see that glitters is gold, right? Not every huge ministry that you see is actually of God. Your parking lot ministry is just as important. Your ministry at work is just as important. And I'm not telling you to go pull out a Bible and preach like this at work, but the way you carry yourself is an open door for God to bring someone to you at work just to ask you questions, right? I've seen that happen many times. So our ministries may not be as glamorous, but just as important or even more important because they're real. There are people that only you can reach. There are people that only I can reach. And there are people that will not listen to me. And there are people that will not listen to you. There is somebody that God has for each and every one of us to reach. God has entrusted all of us with our own people that we can reach.